world she traveled.
Honoring women who made a difference.
A Cooler Kids gift to our community.
Welcome to a personal interview with Anita Doering, conducted on Thursday, April 27th, 2006, by Kylie.
Okay, so you're an archivist, or how do you say it?
Archivist.
Archivist.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about yourself.
I'm not from La Crosse originally. I'm from Middleton, Wisconsin, which is just outside of Madison. And I grew up there, went to elementary and middle school and high school there. Then I went on to go to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I got a BA degree in history and international relations with a French concentration. And then I thought, what am I going to do with this? And so then I decided to go to graduate school, and I got a degree in library and information studies with a concentration in archives administration. So that's the long and the short of it.
All right. What age did you start archivist?
Being an archivist, I started actually at DePaul University, which is in Greencastle, Indiana. What year was that? That was 1987. No, 1988. I graduated in 87. I started that job in 88. And then from there, I worked there about 6 months, and a job opened up at La Crosse Public Library, and so I've been here ever since.
When you were a child, what did you want to do or be?
I wanted to be a nurse. I remember that. I don't know why I wanted to be a nurse. My dad worked in a hospital. I think that's probably why I thought maybe I wanted to be a nurse. I never thought about a career in history or archives at all until I was much older.
What interested you in being an archivist?
It's sort of like being a history detective, that there's a lot of detective work that goes on with history. You have somebody wants to know something, and you have a few tools, and being able to use those tools to get to the answer that you want. That really interested me. And plus, I just liked historical things and old things, and that really, I like genealogy. That was fun. I did that even in high school, searching out my family tree.
Were any of your family members archivists?
No, my dad was a history major, but he always worked in the healthcare industry. He never worked actually doing any kind of archiving or museum or librarian work at all.
What is your favorite part of being an archivist?
Probably doing more in-depth research and hunting for the answer. I enjoy that a lot.
Okay.
Do you have any childhood memories of playing with your friends or other things in Middleton?
I had a friend that had a dog, and I never had animals till I was about 8. I had a cat. But before then I thought, well, this was a lot of fun to walk the dog every day. So one time I thought I can do this by myself, and nobody was around, so I knew where the leash was, and I took the dog for a little walk when I was about 5. I remember that in particular. But yeah, I had a lot of friends. My parents worked, so I was pretty much after school, I'd be home by myself till they came home for an hour and a half or something like that. But
Did you what happened when you were walking the dog?
nothing bad happened. I don't know. I can't believe that nothing bad happened. But I came back, and their mom was like, "You should tell us before you want to do something like that." Like I said, I was about 5, I think. So.
About when was the first time in your life that you discovered that you wanted to be an archivist?
I was actually in college, and I was trying desperately to think of somehow to use my history without teaching. I had thought about getting a PhD and actually teaching at the college level, but the jobs were so scarce that I was really not encouraged, I'll say, by my professors to do that. So another friend was going into library school, and so she kind of showed me the ropes, and I thought that sounded like a really interesting field to get into, was archives and dealing with old documents and selecting what was going to be saved, basically, for people to search for in the future.
Did you have any second thoughts on being an archivist?
Nope, I never did.
What do you really do?
What do I really do? On a daily basis, I would say more than half my day is helping people when they walk in the door, if they phone or have email questions. They may want something as simple as what's the population of La Crosse in 1940, or they may want something much more in depth about I need to know how this road has changed over time because I'm having an argument with my neighbor or something like that. So it can really vary. There are some questions that we just can't answer, and those are really frustrating. But we're fortunate that we get a lot of help from the community, that they'll bring in photographs, they donate things, so that all of that helps us to better answer everybody's questions. But that's probably about half of my day, maybe a little bit more than half. I do some professional work around the state. So I do work with other librarians around the state. We just finished a records retention guidelines that just got passed last February. We work with our state association, setting up conferences, stuff like that. Then there's always administrative stuff, working with scheduling, people needing time off for this or that, and that kind of thing. So that probably consumes the other 10 or 20% of my day. But I love to work with the old documents, going through when people donate things, trying to identify like where the photograph was taken or when it was or who's in it. Trying to work with materials and actually get them organized and preserve them for future generations.
Did you bring any pictures or anything?
I didn't bring any pictures, I'm sorry, and I'm going to have somebody take some pictures of me actually doing stuff. I didn't have any pictures of actually working with documents, except when I was in college, and those are kind of weird, but so I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on taking some pictures of me actually doing something.
If you're not working, what do you like to do?
Oh goodness, I have a 5.5-year-old son, so a lot of times he keeps me busy from my activities, but before I had my son, I really enjoy doing, bird watching. I like that a lot. And I knew nothing about birds, and I kind of got interested in it, and I'm getting better at it, but I still need a lot of practice. And so I work with, there's a bird festival that's coming up, 3rd annual one. I'm working with some people on that. Cemeteries in La Crosse County, we're very interested in trying to get those lists up to date, and actually now we've started to do digital photographs of the headstones and put those on the Genealogy Society website. So if you're interested in going out to a cemetery and taking pictures, let me know. Get involved with the community in other ways too, the County Historical Society, the Friends of the Library, the church, things like that. I do sleep occasionally.
Who inspired you to become who you are right now?
Probably my dad, because he was the one in the family that was interested in history. He was actually much more interested in military history, which didn't interest me at all. The politics and the World War II and Civil War were his big things that he really liked, and I never got into that. But I really got into family history, and he was interested in that too, but he of course wanted me to do all the work. But yeah, I would say probably Dad, just because of his interest in history.
Are you interested in military history at all anymore, or yet?
Not really. I'm much more interested in social history, which is more the history of everyday people, family, structure, and that kind of thing. But I don't use that much in my job. I mean, most of my being an archivist is trying to find answers for people, although that helps to know, some trends in the area. If your family's Norwegian, then they probably came around 1860, 1870. They came to the La Crosse area. The man may have come first. He probably went up to work in the pineries and do lumberjack kinds of stuff, and then when he earned enough money, then he bought a farm and brought the rest of the family over. So knowing some basic trends of the history of the county really helps me to help other people, especially when they're doing something like genealogy.
How has the county changed from when you were a kid to now?
Well, I didn't come to the county until about 18 years ago. I've only been in La Crosse about that long. But I have noticed a change in terms of that a lot of people are moving farther and farther out of the city and more around the suburbs for various reasons, that there's more growth in places like Onalaska, Holman, more so than La Crosse. Though I think La Crosse has done a pretty good job of, lately anyway, of trying to maintain the downtown district and fixing that up and doing historic preservation, fixing up the older buildings rather than tearing them down, which was the big thing to do in the 70s with federal money to do that, and so they pretty much wiped out the downtown area along the Harborview project, that was called. So yeah, there have been quite a few changes, I would say, on the positive end.
How do you feel about what you do?
I love what I do. I do. Every day I learn something. I learn something about La Crosse or a person from La Crosse, or I can't say that there's ever a day that goes by in my job that I don't learn something. So, and I appreciate that. I like to learn and to grow. I don't want to be in one spot forever. So,
Is there a favorite historical site in La Crosse that you have researched on?
A favorite. Well, I've been doing some research on something called the Freethinkers, and they were a group that came over from Hanover, Germany in 1848. It was sort of an intellectual movement. They really were anti-church. That would be probably the easiest way to put it. They called themselves an investigating society. They had a library. They didn't have church services, but they were very secular, I guess would be the best way to say it. One story is that during the Lutheran church services, they would bang pots and pans outside the windows to upset services and things like that. So they were certainly a rebel group. They were a very small group, though, and they were up in Bostwick Valley, or the town of Berry Mills, in that area. And they had a cemetery, and their cemetery, there aren't any stones on it, so we're trying to figure out if people are really buried there or if they all got reinterred. A lot of them wound up in the Hamilton Mausoleum, and so we're trying to figure out when that happened. For instance, there are people that are buried in the Hamilton Mausoleum that died in 1885, and the mausoleum wasn't built till 1916. So obviously somebody was disinterring these people, and we would like to know why. That's a very interesting question we haven't been able to answer. So been working on that lately.
Is it easier, do you think your job's easy?
No, I think it actually gets more challenging, especially with technology. We have people that bring pictures in and they want them scanned right then and there, and you're doing other things, and it makes it kind of hard to please everybody at one time. But you don't make appointments like you're going to the doctor or something like that. You just walk in the room. So things like that are a little bit challenging. We have more and more things that are available online, and it's hard to get a handle on what's out there. And when somebody walks in, oh, I know just where to go for that, is not always the case anymore. That's probably more so for my colleagues than in the local history area, but it's certainly true of the genealogy, that there's more and more online, more and more people doing chat rooms and bulletin board kind of stuff, and it's sometimes kind of hard to hook into that network.
What life skills do you need for this job?
I would say an interest in history, an appreciation for history and old things, a desire to learn. You can't make assumptions, which I often do. I do that because I think it'll speed up my process sometimes, and sometimes it does just the opposite. It stalls me. I would say those are probably the main. And you do have to be detail-oriented, because we do a lot of database work, and we have to be precise in how we read and interpret that information. Those are probably the critical ones anyway.
If you were not able to be an archivist, what would you want to be?
Oh boy. If I couldn't be an archivist, what would I be? Probably an unemployed college professor. There's probably more jobs than that than there are archives. I'm the only archivist. There's only two of us, actually, in the city of La Crosse. One at the university and one at the public library. It's a very limited field in terms of of how many archivists are actually in the state. And if you ask me that question, I would say it's probably around 50 to 75. And that's including corporate, like Harley Davidson has one person. CUNA Credit Union has, I think, more than one. They probably have a staff of 2 professional archivists. So the Pleasant Company has 1 professional archivist. So it's not too many, You're kind of on your own when you're out there.
Why do you work at like the library if you're an archivist?
About 25 years ago, the library had an addition, and they had a kind of a relationship with the County Historical Society. They got a bequest, and as part of that, the library decided to add on an archives room. The idea being that the Historical Society would, which did have a lot of archival, paper-based materials and photographs, would give those to the archives to be processed, and that would be the public access point for their materials, as well as any materials that would be donated to the library since then. So that's kind of how it got started, which was very unusual for a public library, and especially in a city of this size. So we've grown and grown and grown, and we've had people from all over the state come and examine us and say, this is very interesting. A lot of libraries do have a local history collection, but they don't actually have a professional archivist that administers it, so, or it may not be in a separate room, so we're fortunate that we have that. Another thing I've really tried to do is make strong ties with City Hall, because we're a city department, and so I've consciously tried to reach out to key departments and establish really good relationships with them. So that they would see the value of archives, and so we kind of act as a municipal archives as well. It's just the community archives, but I think it helps people because they want to get at old records that they may not necessarily feel comfortable going to City Hall to get. So,
do you enjoy working at the library, or would you rather be somewhere else?
I really do enjoy working at the library. When I first started, I thought, oh boy, I'd really like to be in a college setting, and then I got over that. I decided there were so many different ways that I could go and really build up and establish the collection that I felt I really could make an impact where I am. So I'm still there after 18 years. Still enjoy it.
In the past 18 years, what was your favorite part of being an archivist?
I'd say one of my first experiences, this was actually in Greencastle, was going up into this dingy, dirty, filthy attic in the dark with a flashlight and a dust mask on, and recovering the old city tax records, which really helps with property research when people are trying to figure out how old their house is. And that was probably one of the most exciting things. I felt like it was really saving history that I had it in my hands, that people hadn't looked at this stuff in years, and I could have done without the mouse poo. But there's a few hazards with being an archivist and going out in the field. That and bat dung, dog urine. We've had that too. That wasn't very pleasant. That doesn't happen very often, but it is there. And lifting heavy stuff, you have to do that too. But to me, that was just like the holy grail. And, it was important for the community and the people who lived there, but, in the big scheme of things, the National Archives would go, well, big deal. But it was important to that community, and it was a really interesting find to be able to bring those out and share them with people so they had access to them.
If when you retire, do you plan to do anything else?
I'll probably volunteer at the library. Until they change everything I've done, and then I'll get mad and leave. No. And I would really like to work on getting the cemetery information that we have on GIS. I think that would really be a cool thing to do. That people could actually, on the computer, they could use their mouse and actually click on a name, and then it would give you a map, like right where that person is in the cemetery, and maybe have a digital picture of the stone. And I think that would be, maybe that'll still happen before I retire, I don't know. But that's where I see that going, and I think I'd really like to be a part of that happening. It'd be pretty awesome.
Can you explain the GIS a little more?
GIS is graphic information systems is what it is. The county and the city use it, mainly land offices. What they do is they can track, they take aerial views, they use those aerial views, and they transform it into basically a big map. And we've done that with the cemeteries, and we're able to actually locate on a map where these are. And that's important for instance, if there's, I'm just use the cemetery example. If we know that there's a cemetery, even though it may not have any headstones or anything, if we know where that is and they can mark that off on the county map, when someone comes to apply for a permit, for a building permit, by law they can't build within so many feet of a cemetery, and they may not know that one is there. That happens especially with Native American remains. Then the county can say, no, you can't have a permit because you're too close to a cemetery. The problem we have with Native American remains is that there's a controversy with the land information wants the information, and so they input it, but they have to code it as such so it doesn't come out on a map, so that they're afraid of vandalism on the original sites. So if you went in, you got a cemetery map from the county, they would give you a map of established, sites, not necessarily the Native American burial sites, or the archaeological sites would probably be a broader term for that. So, but anyway, that's how they do it. It's basically using a computer to do mapping, and they can do different layers, they're called. You can have a layer that has the Excel energy lines. You can have a layer that has the city bus lines. You can have a layer that has the sewer lines, and they can overlay all of that information, and so you can see it graphically on a computer screen. And then they can export out data with certain coordinates. It's really interesting, and they're hoping to get that more online. They've done some already, but they're really hoping to get more deeds online and more of the graphical actual mapping material online. They're getting there. It just takes a while. Takes money.
When you were researching, have you ever found someone you've known or anything?
Other than doing family genealogy, no, I haven't really.
When you're working, do you wish that there was like a certain tool that you needed that you don't have?
Sometimes I wish I could talk to dead people and interview them and find out, so why did you do this? Or I'm not understanding this. Or sometimes to help interpret some of the information is difficult. Doing property information, for instance, the tax record will have a tax for a lot, but maybe there's 2 houses on a lot, and it can be very difficult to try and figure out exactly when which house was built when based on the tax record. But yeah, interviewing people that are long gone would be I need a seance, I guess, to do that. But that's probably the only thing that I've really wished in terms of tools. And I wish that more people would think about old records and donating them rather than trying to sell them on eBay or sell them to an antique dealer or something like that.
If you could interview dead people, how would that change your job?
It would be hard to document, wouldn't it? We're supposed to have, in theory, a quotable source when we give out information, and sometimes that's not always possible in the archives area. We try, but sometimes it's really more of a hypothesis than it is, and what we do is we, just like in history, we have a theory and we make arguments based on that theory. So it's not always as cut and dried as something in the science field.
Do you only look on the land forms, or do you look for other stuff?
Oh, we look for a lot of different stuff, a lot of genealogy things. So we're looking for a lot of people in some cases. So we rely a lot on obituary information if they're already dead. If they're alive, then it's much more difficult actually to track down information. Adoption searches are probably the hardest, unless they know something to start with, because those can really be difficult. A lot of the records are closed. We don't have the materials that we would need to really help them necessarily, especially if it's out of state. So we probably search for people more than anything.
Okay. I I guess that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for
Thank you
having
for
me
coming.
over.
Thank you for coming.
This podcast brought to you from La Crosse, Wisconsin by the Cooley Kids at Longfellow Middle School in conjunction with the League of Women Voters.